Welcome back after your coffee break, everybody. I hope you managed to catch up and do a little bit of networking and meet some new people, whether that's online or in person at the event. We are now moving on to the G3 presidential debate. And before we actually start the debate with our international panel, I'm going to ask Sven from AIPC to talk about the G3 group. Sven.
Thank you, James. And it's just 1 minute introduction to explain what G3 is about. It's an alliance between AIPC, ICCA, which is the International Convention and Congress Association, and UFI, which is the Global Association of the Exhibition Industry. It was conceived in early 2019, formally announced during AIPC's annual Congress last year in Antwerp in 2019. And the entire purpose is to replace competition by collaboration for the benefit of our members. That's what we want to achieve. I think one of the key examples of that is the guides we received and produced this year in very close collaboration on how to deal with COVID during its different phases, from what is happening now to how do we reopen for business events. And we just published the second version of that. So that is one of the key examples of what this collaboration brought. It's about streamlining of the messages and making sure that our members get the right and adequate resources in the most efficient way. That is G3.
Thank you, Sven. Okay, so let's turn to our presidential speakers now. And I'm going to start with the lady first. Mary, can you just tell us who you are, where you're from, etc.?
Mary Larkin. I am living in the state of Maine in the US. And yes, I do have an Irish accent. But I am president of Diversified Communications US division, which does include some international events. We run 28 to 30 events out of this office. We have now digital products, magazines, and conferences as well. Good. I'm also president of UFI for this year.
Oh, that's the important thing, isn't it? That's why you're here today, right? Aloysius, please tell us about you.
Yes. Well, good morning, everyone. So the president of AIPC is my happy hour job, and my day job is the CEO for SingEx Holdings. We are both a venue manager as well as an events developer and manager. We have 3 offices in China, India, and Indonesia, and we do a range of trade shows as well as conferences and festivals. So good to join my colleagues from the G3 Alliance.
Thank you, Aloysius. And James Rees.
Thank you, James. Well, yes, James Rees here as ICCA president, but also the day job, which is executive director at Excel London. And actually, Excel is a proud member of UFI, ICCA, and AIPC. We're passionate supporters of each association. But Excel, which runs 400 events each year, we have about 4 million visitors through our venue each year, and contributing 4.5 billion to the London and UK economy. We're very passionate about the G3, the Alliance, and the extra support that the association can give us. So very pleased to be here and part of this debate.
Great, thank you, James. So I'm just going to tell our audience a little bit about how the session will go. We're going to have a debate around 4 areas that are going to impact the regeneration of the industry. And the first area we'll be looking at is new business models. And then we will go on to discuss the new event ecosystem, how that might work in the future, then look at the importance of collaboration within that system, and finally, how technology can help facilitate all these things together to make sure that we have efficient and economically viable outcomes. So each speaker is going to be talking for a minute or 2 on each of these areas, and the session will finish with a Q&A, which will be live on stage and led by Sven and the CEOs of the association. So Mary, I'd like to start with you if possible. And could you tell us what your feelings or opinions are on the new business models that may be evolving at this time in the industry.
Well, during this entire COVID period, I've been involved in many discussions about the evolution of virtual events and hybrid events, and also just solutions that are being directed to help our customers meet, so the buyers and sellers to meet. And I feel like there's an element of fear about some of the virtual products, but I think we need to embrace it. I think it's only going to get better. So how do we incorporate that into our live event model when we do reopen? I've seen access to customers that we've never had before, that we're actually gaining revenue from them because they now have a solution that they may not have been able to attend in person for scheduling, for budgetary considerations, but now we're actually able to bring them into our product mix. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing what is going to evolve. I find that we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration later on, but I also see that the supply chain, as it were, so the contractors, the exhibitors, the venues, the organizers, they're all coming together to try and figure out a solution, and everyone is open-minded, or for the most part open-minded, and trying to find ways that we can keep in contact, and also to be able to have offerings for our clients. And so that our venues are working with us to see if there's anything that they can do to help us. We're working with our customers to see is there anything we can do to help them. And so I think that it's going to be an evolution, and this technology is only going to get better. So that's what I'm seeing right now.
Okay. And Aloysius, how do you feel an organization like yours, or even the members of AIPC, can actually create new revenue streams with the kind of idea that Mary's talking about, with that supply chain and with new ways of working and those new business models?
I think it's for all of us, COVID-19 is truly a crisis of a generation, and it has led to a global reset of businesses, economies, I think even societies. And I think for the first time in history, we have to really take a fundamental relook at how we are going to work together. How are we going to thrive in a post-COVID environment? Clearly, when the environment, how we live, work, and play changes, the need of businesses and therefore our customers, like Mary's company, must change. So they will need to adapt. We need to find solutions to their pain points. We hear about the fear of moving into the virtual realm. We need to think about what could be the new model for hybrid businesses as the blend of physical and digital dimensions come into play. And we also need to find new ways to collaborate to grow. But I think fundamentally, we need to ask the question, who are you delivering value to? And how are you measuring that value? Now, that value is going to change as the environment is fast evolving. And as Mary has mentioned, event organizers, I think, have scrambled to move their in-person events online. And I think they have caused organizers to look deeper at their purpose. Rather than being in the business of producing live events, I think they're seeing the need to execute on the core value proposition, which seems to be the creating of community and the sharing knowledge, regardless of the platform, whether it's physical or digital. And so when there's a change in need, it requires a change in response. So centers will need to review their baseline of services, products, and of course, the infrastructure itself to cater to a spectrum of needs ranging from the physical to the digital. And I think at the same time, as our clients' needs change, we also need to adapt by repurposing our capabilities and our resources to fulfill these newly surfaced needs. And as I said, it will evolve as the situation evolves.
And James, this business model, the way it's evolving, how have you found that process so far amongst your members and in your organisation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly at XL in London and our sister venue, our owners in the Middle East at ADNEC in Abu Dhabi, we've been having cross departmental discussions, but I've also had the opportunity to talk to many both venue owners, DMOs, and meetings management organisations around the world during this time. One of the things, and there's a great debate, of course, we're having this debate now. There's a sense that we are finding our way to what will be new practices, new perhaps event styles, and new ways of working. But also, I think we should recognise this. Everyone's talking about hybrid. You know, what is happening with hybrid right now? For me, hybrid has been with us, and it's certainly in London for those forward-looking organisations, both corporate and association, for over 10 years. You know, hybrid has been rather than using the word hybrid, I like to talk about the digital connectivity that has been in use. We've seen organisations such as Cisco with Cisco Live, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, European Society of Cardiology, embedding digital into their organisations and using that to develop further dissemination of either knowledge or products. So it's been wrapped into their business model for many years. Traditionally, that's been to drive future face-to-face attendance at the following year's events, you know, to build additional communities. What we're seeing now in the discussions going forward as planners seek to adapt what they've known and have run in the past and thinking ahead to 2021, 2022, is a rebalancing so that they want an element of face-to-face, but they recognise that there will be a period now of re-engineering, and so that percentage balance between how much is face-to-face and how much is digital or virtual or hybrid, whichever word we like to use. That is the debate that's going on right now. And we're seeing a sort of, whereas previously it might have been a 90-10 or an 80-20, I think we're going to see a much closer balance, either in parity or I can see a sort of 40-60 split with face-to-face and real-time. That then, for all of us as the G3, with our members, with our supply chain, with our properties, as Aloysius has just alluded to, we need to think hard and quick about what that means and what we need to deliver. And I think the debate now, and we'll come on to collaboration, but the collaborative debate around what the new business model is going to require will be around what do we want the great event outcomes. We had a model, if you like, and an understanding of what great event outcomes meant. I think we need to work out, right, what do great event outcomes look like in 2021 and beyond, and that will help us then hopefully arrive at solutions that work for all sides of the event industry and the community, so that we, you know, get our business back to doing what it does very well very quickly. So
I can see your point there about you know, collaborating and looking at that supply chain and looking at the 60-40 format in terms of blended or hybrid events. But how does the new ecosystem where we have to have COVID-safe premises or COVID-safe supply chains, how does that work into that equation? I'll start with you again, James, just because we ended on your point.
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, the starting point is the centres, the venues, the organisers. I think already we're in a great place. We can already organise safe events. I think that's one of the key messages we need to be getting out to government. The discussion really with the planners, the organisers, is around those things that we don't have 100% control of. We can control, and we are an industry that knows exactly who's coming to our events and the behaviours of those attendees. We can, we obey rules. We like to, we like processes, and we all have a common interest in making sure events are successful. So we will do what we need to do under the guidance of the various governments under which we're operating. But that then leads, if you like, to the discussion around those elements that we cannot affect. If an attendee is coming to one of our events and they take a taxi, that's not something we can affect. But it may be we need to have discussions with DMOs, if you like, so that the taxis we use, the public transport we use, is COVID safe as it can be. Because once you have 100% control to the extent that you can in any circumstance, or once you maximize the amount of control you have over these events, then that ecosystem, which is ultimately delivering the events and giving our attendees the sentiment that events are safe to go to and people are going to start coming back in good numbers, will hopefully then help deliver this turnaround and the restart of the industry.
And Aloysius, I'm going to come to you next on this ecosystem point. So let's say, for example, you do a consumer event for tens of thousands of people, and then you're doing a corporate association event for those people. Is there going to be a variation in the ecosystem within that supply chain? Because we have corporate responsibility to their, you sending your employees to a place that possibly could become an infection point. But then if it's a Comic-Con, for example, that's my personal choice to go along. So how are you making that call?
That's a very good point. And I think we need to realize that in this situation, the measure of success of any event, consumer or even business event, it's the mix of participants from different geographies, different markets. At this point in time, I can't travel from Singapore to the US or to London or to Paris, and I think vice versa. Now the question is, if the aviation sector is simply decimated when you talk about long haul flights, for those that can enjoy domestic travel or at least regional travel like the Shenzhen area in Europe, I think the events can still continue, of course, with the safe management measures in place. Now, bearing that in mind and knowing that we have to have this rich exchange, because at the end of the day, any event is all about having that face-to-face meeting, having that serendipity, in effect, doing the wheeling and dealing face-to-face. Now, we can't do that, and we can't work with participants or attendees from different regions and different markets. How are you going to engage them? And I think our customers and organizers, clients would insist on meeting those participants and those attendees. And therefore, the players in our ecosystem will really have to rethink what is this business model and how can we engage customers who are still being subject to the various travel and border restrictions. And therefore, the virtual engagement must come into play. So whether we call it hybrid, digital, or physical, that blend is very, very necessary in order to make it truly worthwhile and meaningful for the event to take place. And at the same time, we must also expect companies to extensively review their travel and work policies. Insurance will take a big hit, and I think it's going to have a lot of premium in terms of what can they include and what is going to be excluded in any insurance coverage. And therefore, we also have to recognize that depending on how long the situation pans out, it's IATA, I think, was citing the return of the aviation sector where international travel is concerned. It's going to return sometime in 2024. That's 3-4 years from now. What happens during that time? I think we should expect companies to be pretty much at ease with digital engagement, especially for those that engage in long-haul travel. and for business continuity needs. And therefore, we need to think, how do we factor all this into play? And therefore, as physical events slowly get underway, it's imperative, I guess, for us to adopt those hybrid models. And it's about how you blend the physical and digital dimensions rightly to the industry or the community that the event serves. And for those that are able to restart events or stage pilot events to test out the safe management measures, I think we should use that opportunity to ascertain what business fundamentals are new and need to be strengthened in this new situation, and what will competitive edge look like in hybrid businesses, so that our industry and our enterprises can be resilient in a post-COVID world order.
So, Mary, I've seen you nodding your head to some of the points that Aloysius made, but I'm going to pick up on one of those. So, one of the points that we were talking about is the duty of care of the employers and the way that they look after the employees and the long-haul travel piece. So, UFI is an international association, and you hold conferences. I mean, how are you dealing with that new ecosystem of wanting to get attendees to international events, etc., or having to travel long haul, or are you looking at other formats to reorganize that ecosystem?
Well, so I was agreeing with points that both James and Aloysius referred to. You know, the serendipity. You know, what happens at a live event. There's nothing that replaces that spur of the moment conversation that I don't think digital or virtual events can deliver. So in terms of duty of care, you know, I'm looking at attending the UFI event in Basel and planning for that. You know, what do I have to do beforehand to be there, because it's important to be there. But for employees and customers, I think I'm amazed at what has happened in the last 6 months. The evolution of the work that the G3 has done and many of the individual companies have done to ensure that we can open events safely. The wait for the vaccine is definitely going to slow events coming back to their former glory, as it were. But I also think that testing, it's going to be an incorporation of all aspects: testing, wearing of masks, you know, the potential vaccination. For employees, I think the communication, you know, reading through the guide, which I spent quite a bit of time on this week, reading through that, the amount of communication processes, and I know someone alluded to the fact that we do like processes, all of that is going to be a huge amount of work. And I think the one thing I've learned is that cancelling an event takes twice as much work as running an event. It's actually easier to run an event than what we've actually been through for the past 6 months. And I think, you know, the policing of people wearing masks and the enforcement and the working with the authorities, I think we have the collaboration is multifaceted right now. And, you know, listening to Aloysius talk about our new world, you know, it's the reset of society. I totally agree with that. How we do things is going to be different, but we have to work together, both from the employee standpoint, the company standpoint, city standpoint, the venue standpoint, to make sure that all aspects of keeping an attendee safe and keeping our events safe so that we can all reopen is going to be key. The collaboration is going to have to be huge. But I'm seeing that. And, you know, I saw the video of the Vienna venue with, you know, the quick testing and the airport in Rome where they, you know, you can get onto a COVID-free flight because everyone's been tested before they get on the plane. That's happened in 6 months. Like, that is amazing. So where are we going to be 6 months from now, and how are we going to work together? But I totally agree with what everyone's saying. It's the collaboration and the working together is going to be our best practice moving forward.
The next area that we are going to talk about, and it's been introduced via a few of the speakers already, is the collaboration amongst the stakeholders and the collaboration within the ecosystem. Mary, you made a very good point earlier about how collaboration needs to take place in order to make that ecosystem safe and provide some certainty to the attendees. So what kinds of collaboration are we looking at?
Well, you know, this industry is by nature collaborative, but there has been, to use one of these famous buzzwords of the moment, it's unprecedented how much collaboration is going on in the industry right now. You know, we all know that all events have to open safely, because if one event doesn't, the impact on our whole industry is huge. So I've seen collaboration from working with venues, other organizers working together. They are sharing information. They are, like, if you look at the safe practices guide that was Informa, Reed and Clarion worked on together from the very beginning to ensure that we could open events. I think what's happened is everyone has worked together to make sure that the event is safe, to make sure that we're communicating. But what's happening now is we need to collaborate and try and help our customers have confidence in all the work that has been done so far. I think that's going to be the hardest part. But if you look at the guide, you know, the case studies and the amount of communication, the working with the authorities, every aspect has to be intertwined to ensure that the entire ecosystem can start and evolve as it's going to. I've heard about some events taking place in the US where it's a small group coming in, but the city has worked with the venue and worked with the organizer. In this case, it was the police department for their examinations. But the steps that everyone has taken, and they're sharing that information across the board so that nobody's trying to recreate the wheel, as it were, and then they're learning and improving and constantly refining. So it's been good to see the collaboration. It's been really good to see how open people are to collaborating, but it's the only way that we're going to move forward.
No, I agree. But Aloysius, you talked earlier about that user journey and, you know, those steps within that journey. So what kind of collaboration is needed within that journey?
I think we need to take note that COVID-19 has pointed the finger on our strengths, weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and shortcomings, regardless of who you are or the actor that you are in the ecosystem. And I think when we talk about collaboration, it is asking the question as to what is this value of this collaboration? And it has to be the assurance and the confidence we give to the customers, to our visitor, to the participant. And it means that working not just amongst ourselves in a meetings industry, but more importantly in the different jurisdictions that we are in. First and foremost has to be the healthcare protocols and the epidemiological situations of different markets. This situation calls for different markets to ensure that there is mutual or reciprocal healthcare protocols. You have to tick that box in order for you to begin flying to the market that you want to, or the trade show that you want to attend. And I guess secondly would be when you are able to know what are the requirements or the expectations of the national healthcare authorities. How do you roll that out into the different touch points in the ecosystem or in the economy? And that's where we have to hunker down, work together in order to ensure that we are consistent in the application of the outcomes that have been stated in those healthcare protocols or directives. That's something which we cannot shy away. We are operating in an operating environment, and that's going to be quite key. So it's therefore not possible for us, whether associations or enterprise, to be all things to all members. And especially when you're now in a situation where it's so fast evolving, you will definitely need to work together so that we can emerge stronger, and at the same time instill that confidence and assurance in that customer. So what it also shows is that associations amongst ourselves, like UFI, ICCA, and AIPC, is that we can remain flexible, agile, and lean into ambiguity. And we'll be better doing that if we work together to navigate this very uncertain path forward. It's anybody's guess what's going to happen 3 days from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 months from now. Will there be a second? We are seeing a second peak of the virus. Will there be a third? Will there be a mutation? Will there be disease X, as some of the medical experts have stated, where that is going to be is almost the 4 horsemen of apocalypse coming in? I think that's where we have to bring together our collective expertise and wisdom and networks in order to ensure that we are able to confront it confidently, because this virus does not respect whether you're a small company or a large economy, or whether you're an SME or whether you are an entrepreneur. So I think that's something which is important for us to bear in mind as we work closer together. And as Sven brought up at the start of the session, with the G3 has demonstrated that this is possible by pulling together our collective strengths and communities to produce the 3 guides to help our members through these challenging times. And of course, the latest being the guide on reopening for business events, which was launched last week.
Great, thank you. So James, I just want to continue on from some of the points Aloysius made. So in terms of the collaborating together for best practices, how do you see this process working in the future in terms of capturing that data as associations, working together as the G3 in an ongoing kind of way? Because I can see what you've done over the last 6 months or the last few months with these reports, but how might that progress in the future? Well, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. And I think beneath all of this, we have an industry where physical presence is around what we do, and that physical presence that builds a sense of belonging and a building of business trust. And one of the words, we're talking about collaboration, but I think collaboration can lead to that further building of trust. And what the G3 has done, I think, has broken down some barriers about who does what and who's better than the other. I've seen a distinct warming of relationships between the 3 organizations that has started to result in these tangible outputs of these reports for all of our members. And the next step for me is we have to be more braver, if you like. Bravery is a word I think that comes to mind when we look at the way we build the future. And we do need to redouble efforts on the advocacy front. I think this is going to be, we've learned a lot in the last few months. We've learned from colleagues around the world that have done it well. And I think by this collaborative effort, where we are building more and more trust, and the trust that our members are seeing being developed now needs to be stepped up into further tangible outputs that then allow our industry as a whole to be better recognised by governments. That we are recognised in many jurisdictions and countries, but there are others that need further support. And that collaboration, by producing and sharing case study advocacy globally, will bring a full mass of of strength, if you like, in what we do, and back up the messages that some in some regions there's a tougher struggle to get that message over about the importance of what we do and why it's going to be good when we do come out of this, why we're going to be there driving the really important job creation, societal change and economic benefits to our cities, our destinations and our regions.
Great, thank you. We're going to move on to the last section of the debate today, and that is around the importance or the role of technology. I say importance because I'm a bit of a tech head, but the role of technology to help facilitate some of these processes, for example, the capture process of the information you were talking about, James. Mary, let's start with you. How do you see the role of technology? You've talked a little bit about hybrid technology and virtual technology, but there are more technologies than that. So have you got a kind of overview of the role of technology in the process of how you get events or regenerate events in the future?
So I agree. There's more technologies. There's more aspects of how we do use technology moving forward. You know, we have to look at how you were talking earlier about the physical journey. So how does technology play a role in that journey? So if I just start with the exhibition center, you know, when you go in, what can you make touchless? What can you how can you actually monitor the number of people in a room, that it's not somebody standing outside with a clicker? You know, it's what facilitates when you're at the venue that in-person and virtual type of event. I think also the venues are associated around an event, like if you look at hotels and so on, I think we need to be working with them as well, because that entire trip around the event needs a lot more focus. You know, we can ensure our event is safe. I think James was talking earlier on about taxis. You can do everything you can to ensure your event is safe and that it is a COVID-free zone and that there's testing going on. Like, in a way, you've to become mother, father, and nurse at an event these days. You know, if somebody does come down and is sick, like, how do you get that message out? How do you communicate with everybody? How do you attract that information that and have customers want to give it to you? Because that's the other privacy issue around it. We're going to have to look at that too. How do we keep the conversation going with them to ensure that not only is their event safe, but when they are home, that they have not been impacted by that event? So I totally agree. I also think that it's not just the technology. You know, James touched on advocacy a second ago. We have to have one single voice and sharing about what technologies work and modernizing as we go along, or evolving as we go along, to ensure that we do deliver the services, you know, that we sell to our customers. But I also think that the speed of adaptation right now and the number of companies that are coming out of the proverbial woodwork, as it were, with virtual products, they're only going to get better and they are going to become stronger. And we have to embrace that and make sure it works for our industries and the industries that we serve. And there's various learning points along the way for those industries. So I think the opportunity for technology in our industry is actually huge right now. And there's going to be many companies that come out of this with new ideas and new, you know, the iPhone example is a really good one. Like, how is what's starting now going to change how we do things in 10 years' time?
Aloysius, just from your point of view, how do you see the role of technology impacting a regenerative ecosystem or the events industry?
I think that there are perhaps two key areas of consideration we have to look at. One is, what are the fairly immediate digital solutions we need to put in place? I'm underscoring some of the points that Mary has brought up. This digital solutions is to facilitate contactless management or engagement, because that's a key part in terms of ensuring the safe distance is ensured. It also goes to manage surveillance, such as contact tracing, density management, and it also in terms of incidents management. Touch wood, if there is a virus cluster emerging, how do we respond? So technology must come into place, because you need to also communicate pretty fast so that you can stem out the virus from spreading. Concurrently, the players in our industry are also testing out virtual platforms. That is a business model. What is this business model that will emerge as a result of hybrid or digital? The jury is still out as to how do you make money from it, right? Is it a platform that has got to do with a digital twin of a physical event? Or is it a digital engagement platform where you are looking at truly engaging communities, looking at collaborative platforms? That will mean that we will have to think about how do we build capabilities on content development and curation across the digital, broadcast, and physical platforms. So I think we are seeing the rise of a lot of broadcast capabilities from different centers in the AIPC membership. And we need to do that because there has to be digital enabled onto the virtual platform. And then how does it weave into the overall experience? And the whole notion of who is going to invest in this digital, in these broadcast studios, green rooms, and digital production. And is it the role of the center? Is it the role of the organizer? Is it both? Because these are pretty heavy investments. So these are things that we are, I guess, trying to discover. What will then define truly the hybrid events? As I mentioned, is it a digital twin of the physical event that many large organizers have opted? Because it includes things like virtual interactions, one-to-one meetings, small networking sessions, or is it a development of a community platform? So what we are seeing now is that as we trial different sort of models and events, we're all grappling with what is the right business model on how to monetize virtual and hybrid event formats. And we are all struggling to formulate cost and revenue structures for these hybrid events, at the same time managing expectations of face-to-face attendees and also the safe measures that have come into place. So I think as we look at how do we employ or develop technologies, no doubt it will certainly get better and better. We also have to bear in mind who exactly does that. What are the new skill sets and the capabilities that an employee must have? Gone are the days where I'm just doing audiovisual, I'm just doing F&B. You probably have to be multi-skilled for the simple reason you cannot afford to have one task undertaken by one person. I'm in the physical side of things and I'm in the digital side of things. It will not make commercial sense. So I think that's where we have to think it holistically and then see how best to establish, hopefully, a commercially viable model for hybrid formats moving forward.
So, James, Aloysius is definitely an advocate for hybrid events. You can tell by that little speech there. How do you see the role of technology in the regenerative process, whether it's hybrid, or do you think that we're going through an innovation boom right now in terms of technology for the events industry? What's your opinion on that?
First of all, I think it's my belief that the industry will come back. We're not in a scenario where we will be hybrid or digital forever. I do think that will come back. Tech, I believe also this moment in time will allow us to embrace certain areas of tech. I've certainly enjoyed, I have to say, less email and more Teams and Zoom calls, because you do actually see people around the world. I know we are frustrated by certain elements of that, but getting off email and seeing people's faces, I think, is fantastic. I would also say beware the gimmick. Many of us have been through many presentations of this is the latest amazing tech thing that's going to change the face of the industry. We do get steady advancements, and as I said earlier in the discussion, the industry adapts very well. But I think where we are now is it's been touched on as part of this discussion. We do need to do to embrace technology, begin to reduce touch points. Why do I need to go into a registration area and pick up a plastic holder and put a piece of cardboard in it with my name on? This is 20th century, not 21st century ways of working. So we have all this amazing technology. Let's embrace elements of it and allow technology potentially to build a lot more automation into what we do. If I walk into a convention center, it'd be great that I don't have to do anything. The convention center knows I'm walking in. A widget on my iPhone or Android tells all the other people who I want to be connected with I am now in the venue, and we can start to have better technology enabled meetups with our colleagues that we know are there somewhere in this huge center, and we want to meet right now because we've got important business to talk about. So automation, I think, is going to be a really good technical development. And I think what COVID may well have done is actually to press the fast forward button on many things that we've already been talking about and debating as centres, as suppliers, as organisers. And then finally, I think we're going to see, I'd be intrigued to know what others feel, but the change in working practices where fewer people are commuting and going to offices than, and I think that will stay with us for quite some time. That this could be a cultural change, but there will still need to be a time to gather people together. Organisations will want to communicate with their workforce, and whilst they may be somewhat more disparate in the fact that they will be working possibly from home as well as the office, we need to use technology then to bring those people together in the way we have done in the past, to communicate key messages or provide business enhancing experiences. So there's a whole bunch, if you like, of answers there in that particular piece, but I think it's important that we embrace it and use it, and that can only be good for the industry, I would say.
Thank you, James. So, Mary, I'm just going to come back to you. So, what is going to happen with the cost of this technology? Where's that?
So, there's a few things that I see. This is the true debate. The debate on advocacy, the debate on technology, the debate on, James just touched on, not being digital and virtual forever. I agree with that, but I also think that we have to embrace it. But when it does come to, this is where the rubber's going to meet the road very soon, is when we do reopen, who's paying for it? So we're collaborating, we are all working together. I think we also have to be fair. And
sorry, Mary, can I stop you there?
Yeah.
You went all weird. So you went, who's paying? And then could you start again, please?
So I think the great debate is who's going to pay for this. And I do feel that we've been collaborating all along. We've been sharing information. Where the rubber's going to meet the road is the decision on who will pay for the cost of these investments, this technology. I think I'm with two venue people right now, and I hate to say it, but I do feel that the venues are going to bear the brunt of it. and it's not that I'm saying that's where it should be. I just foresee that that's where it's going to happen, because you're going to use that technology for many events, and those building of green rooms and broadcasting centers, but it's going to come at a cost to the organizer. And we're going to come out of this and our cost structure will be different. And I think it's time as an industry we embrace that. I think it should be fair that this should be the real collaboration about what technology we are going to need to reopen events, and how much does it cost, and how can we help facilitate that sharing of the expense in a way across the industry. So it's not just, we don't want to cripple our venues, asking and demanding for new technologies to be put in. But I foresee that events will be smaller. There may be an exchange of where the monies go. Events may be smaller, but eventually they will become big again, because a small event always builds on itself. So yeah, I think that's where the fight is going to start.
Thank you. I'd like you each to round off this discussion with a 1-minute statement on what you think is the main point or points for regenerating the industry in the future. Mary.
Okay, so I have several points that I would make about reopening or regenerating the events industry. I think we have to build confidence. I think we need to be better advocates for our industry, as James touched on earlier on. I think we need to sit down and have the discussion together about who is going to bear the cost of it, because those margins aren't going to be the same for the future. I think the continued collaboration is going to be key. And that's the one thing I'm proud of about this industry, but it's going to have to be with one single voice. We don't want to be going out there confusing governments or cities or venues or customers. At the end of the day, it's the attendee who walks through the door that really creates the microcosm that we have. And it's going to be very important to have a single voice, and therefore re-emphasize all that collaboration that's been happening thus far.
Thank you, Mary. Aloysius.
I think this pandemic situation has shone the spotlight on the value that our industry brings to the economies that we are in. I think it has borne out through the collaboration that we are working very hard on with governments, with different players in the ecosystem. And I think there is a renewed focus as well as appreciation of the value of the industry. The second part I think we have to really bear in mind is the pivot. This pivot to the hybrid business or digital, or however you want to call it. I think we can't underestimate the impact on jobs and capabilities. There will be a new baseline. And this baseline is just like what Wi-Fi was to centers. We were debating about Wi-Fi about 5 years, 6, 8 a decade ago. Now you need to make sure to have broadcast studios, green rooms alongside pretty good Wi-Fi. I think the other aspect will be the need to understand the state of digital readiness. Not all markets, not all countries, and not all enterprises have the same bandwidth or even the same digital strength. And that's something we also have to think about. How do we flex the hybrid models or digital events that can cater to different parts of the world? What I would like to call is, how do you make our event from 1G to 5G compliant?
Good. Thank you very much. And James, finally, you, please.
For me, everything we've been talking about rests on attendee sentiment. And everything we do now around new business models, technology, ecosystems, collaboration, all those elements have to be with our attendees in mind. Because without those, And without the building of trust with those attendees, it will be a slow recovery. And I've used that word trust a number of times on this session, and trust is absolutely everything now. One thing we found in London is, whilst there's been difficult discussions around how we deal with cancellations, postponements, and I know those difficult discussions have been happening everywhere in the world, I think by being open and honest about what the overall outcomes and needs of different organisations need to be, we've opened ourselves up to each other, perhaps more than we have done in the past. And I'm hopeful that is now a good thing, and that being open and being prepared to give a little bit of your secrecy, if you like, your business secrecies away to your partner, so that we're not seen as adversaries, we are seen as partners, hopefully will be a good thing. So that's where I would really like to see further debate on how we build that trust, because ultimately that collaboration will drive our attendance back to our centres, back to our events, and allow a swifter recovery than we might otherwise see.
Thank you, James. Well, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you, Mary, for getting up so early in the morning in Maine. And thank you, Aloysius, for actually staying awake. I'm not going to thank you, James, because you're in the same time zone as I am. So there's an expectation you should be here on with us. But yeah, thank you all for those fantastic viewpoints. We are now going to go to a question and answer session live at the venue. And everybody give a big hand to our speakers.